Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, March 27th, 2025. The esteemed Professor John Mearsheimer joins us now. Professor Mearsheimer, always a pleasure, of course. I have a lot of questions for you going across the board, but we must start with the hot news of the week. In your view, did the Secretary of Defense post sensitive, secret military attack plans on a non-secure site?
Yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, I actually, as someone who served in the Air Force and was in intelligence for a while, was shocked that they would even carry on this discourse on Signal. It's just hard to imagine. One would think all the protocols tell people at that level and tell their assistants as well who work with them that this is verboten. You just don't do this. And the fact that they were carrying on this conversation and putting what has to be secret war plans on the site is just hard to believe.
And then, of course, they're playing games with words, Professor Mearsheimer. Oh, it wasn't classified. It wasn't classified. So some things are secret. You know this better than I, whether they're classified or not. Military attack plans, giving the time, giving the equipment to be used, are, of course, secret, whether the Secretary of Defense has signed a formal document characterizing them as classified or not. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, their claims failed the common sense test.
And two of them claimed, this is Director Gabbard and Director Ratcliffe, under oath, that nothing involving the military was posted on this site.
I'll tell you, I often think about what's happened to the concept of truth in our society. People just lie all the time. They deceive all the time. They spin all the time. You don't know what to believe anymore. This is a tragic situation. And by the way, where it's most apparent is when it comes to Israel, right? Because there you're just not even allowed to talk about how Israel, does this or does that, or how the Israeli issue relates to this issue or that issue. It's just sort of ruled out of court. And the end result is people end up speaking in oblique ways about the issue at hand. The level of dishonesty in our society is really just stunning.
Well, now the government is fostering this. We'll get to this in a minute, but yesterday in this notorious and horrifying video where 6 masked police from the Department of Homeland Security stopped this Turkish grad student on the street, wouldn't answer her questions, wouldn't say who they were, what they were doing. They just grabbed her arms and handcuffed her and whisked her away. And then they said that they were with Homeland Security. They never filed any documents. They didn't return the lawyer's phone calls. And she ended up in the same place in Louisiana where the young man from Louisiana, a place where she's never been, same place where the young man from Colombia was. But we'll get back to that in a minute. I point that out to underscore your argument about the things that happen to people when they speak freely. She wrote an op-ed in a student newspaper saying that the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu had denied food, water, medicine, and electricity to the people in Gaza. A truthful statement. Anyway, back to this thing with Hegseth. If you define espionage the way the federal criminal statutes do, the failure to keep safe secret information entrusted to you, the willful or negligent. It's the rare federal statute that permits a prosecution on the basis of negligence as opposed to intent. The willful or negligent failure to keep safe secret defense materials entrusted to you. Did the Secretary of Defense commit espionage?
Well, I would leave that for the lawyers and the judges because, I don't know the technical details. I mean, it sounds like espionage given what you said, but when it comes to lawyers and judges, I'm never too sure, on what basis.
Understood. And I don't want to put you on the spot, and I can certainly answer that question. The answer is yes. But to my dismay, about 2 hours ago, the Attorney General said there will be no criminal investigation. I don't know if that's her decision, if that's FBI Director Patel's decision, or if that decision came from the White House.
But you're not surprised by that, are you?
No, I'm not surprised at all. There's a
That's
young man, Jack Teixeira, who's sitting in a federal prison for 20 years because he shared this kind of information with his own email group, not with the public, but with his own email group. It wasn't nearly as relevant, nearly as specific as what Hegseth did. So in Donald Trump's America, it depends on who you are, not what you did, if you get prosecuted.
It's not just Donald Trump, though. I mean, the problem is bigger than Trump, right? There's something fundamentally wrong in this country. It goes back, many, many years in many administrations. This is not to defend Trump for 1 second. And one could argue that what they're doing with ICE now is, a giant leap forward in terms of our dissent. But nevertheless, the problem is very deep here. And I don't know how we're going to get out of this mess that we're in.
The problem is very deep. Jefferson predicted in 1826 that shortly before he died, that on the long march of history, liberty shrinks and government power grows. We're seeing government power today, the likes of which we've never imagined. It turns out that the identification of the person that they were talking about killing in this series of texts was made by Mossad. Now, that is not mentioned on the text, but two American intelligence agents, unnamed in the article, were quoted by the Guardian of London as saying that Mossad provided the information about who to kill and when to kill. This guy's going to his girlfriend's apartment, and they blew up the apartment building. We have had Pepe Escobar, a regular journalist who's a friend of the show, on, and he was on Monday after this killing. And he demonstrated conclusively that the killing was in a residential neighborhood and they killed civilians. Did you notice, I'm sure you did, Professor, that in all the transcripts of all these conversations between Hegseth and Rubio and Waltz and the others, there was and the vice president, there was never a debate about whether to kill. It was only about when to kill. What is gained by the American military by all this killing?
But I'm surprised that you find this surprising. I mean, we are and have been supporting a genocide in Gaza since late 2023. I mean, there's nothing new here. And furthermore, if you look at our behavior in Afghanistan, our behavior in Iraq, our behavior in Libya, our behavior in Syria, the number of people who have died, and here we're talking about civilians, women, right, children, elderly men, is off the charts. I mean, this is just standard fare for the United States of America. If you look at Israel, just how it behaves in the Middle East these days, it's, shooting the works up in countries all around the region, and we support it. Nobody protests. They decide they're going to attack in southern Lebanon, they do it. They decide they're going to attack in Syria, they do it. We decide we're going to attack the Houthis, we do it. We don't care about the Constitution. We don't care about the law. We don't care whether civilians are being killed. I mean, this is the point that we've reached here. So right. I find that there's nothing surprising about this tape.
Since you were on last Thursday, the Hamas Health Ministry announced that they had buried their 50,000th Palestinian Gazan resident. The number didn't make a big deal worldwide at all. We are totally unfazed by the magnitude of the slaughter, and that's a small number because this doesn't count the bodies that are found in the rubble. Counts just the bodies that they were able to find in the streets and the buildings and bury.
It's also very important to understand that it doesn't include the people who will die in the immediate future or the near future as a result of what's happened in Gaza. In other words, if you go back to the Holocaust, the Jews directly the Germans, the Nazis murdered significant numbers of Jews directly, but large numbers of Jews in places like the Warsaw Ghetto died slowly over time. So you want to remember that this number is probably, if you take into account those indirect deaths, in the range of 200,000.
Wow.
And the Lancet report made this clear. But again, are we surprised by this? Again, we've been supporting the genocide since the fall of 2023. The Israelis are now trying to starve the Gazans to the point where huge numbers die and they're forced to abandon the Gaza Strip. That's what the policy is. So this is just not surprising at all.
Policy paid for by Donald Trump, not personally by him, but with American funds.
And before that, by Joe Biden.
Correct.
This is what's happened to American values. The United States is supporting an apartheid state that's engaged in genocide. Do you need to know any more?
Right. Back to Hegseth. You're a graduate of West Point, and you spent, correct me, 6 years in the Air Force before
Five years in the Air Force, and I was an enlisted man in the Army before I went to West Point.
Oh my goodness, God love you. Okay. We can talk about that experience at another time. But you know competent leadership when you see it. Is this competent leadership or statecraft? This conversation that they had that sounded like high school kids on a non-secure venue and then lying about it afterwards?
No. I mean, as I said to you at the start of the show, it's hard to believe that they carried on this conversation on Signal. And then furthermore, when you look at the way